77 years young, Joe Walsh has shocked the whole music world by letting out a secret about Don Henley that was never before told. For years, the Eagles weren't only a band, they were a family of complex characters held together by creativity, competition, and devotion. To the public eye, they appeared as icons who were always put together, but behind the limelight, Henley bore secrets, controversy, and emotions hidden deep in his chest. Walsh's confession is not so much about music, it's about brotherhood, survival, and the sacrifices hidden from the world that defined the Eagles' experience. What drove Joe Walsh to finally speak out after all these years is only now being realized by fans and historians alike. If this kind of story touches your heart, if you're someone who cares about truth, responsibility, and speaking up for the voiceless, please like this video, subscribe to our channel Spark Science, and share it with someone who should hear it. Let's get started. It started back in 1975, when Joe Walsh entered the Eagles studio with a guitar riff that was like the sound of a car racing down the highway. The riff was aggressive, fun, and unstoppable. That single burst of sound became the foundation of Life in the Fast Lane, a track that would later define the Hotel California album and become an anthem of the era. Few people know that Don Henley, the perfectionist and philosophical heart of the band, initially wanted nothing to do with the riff. He thought it was too wild for the Eagles' carefully crafted sound. During a 2013 interview with Rolling Stone, Walsh disclosed, "Don watched me play that riff and said, 'That's too wild, Joe. It doesn't fit the Eagles' style.'" This led to weeks of artistic confrontations. Walsh, ever the wild child, wanted to capture recklessness and adrenaline in the song. He was living it then, fast cars, heavy drinking, and a wild approach to music. Henley envisioned something else. To him, the riff was not only a melody, it was a cautionary tale of excess, a tale to be told. Glenn Frey, Eagles co-founder, was caught in the middle, attempting to broker a peace. As Walsh describes, Frey said to Henley, "This riff is gold. Let Joe do what he's best at, and then you sprinkle your magic." Reluctantly, Henley consented, and the song became one of the Eagles' greatest. Henley penned lyrics based on the life of the band themselves in the 1970s, endless parties, drugs, and the alluring danger of fame. Walsh's guitar shrieked like an engine, and Henley's vocals had a haunting message. The outcome was electric. Walsh subsequently admitted during a 2016 Sirius XM interview that Henley continued to invite him to tame the craziness of his solo, to get it sounding more refined. Walsh being Walsh inserted a few rough-around-the-edges notes anyway, and the crowd adored it. His sly smile recalling the anecdote reflected his pride in maintaining his bad boy image. But Life in the Fast Lane was more than a hit. It presaged the artistic tension, and the deep connection, that characterized Henley and Walsh's relationship for decades. By the early 1990s, Joe Walsh was drowning. Alcohol and drug addiction had sunk him so low that he almost lost his career and his life. The former charismatic Eagles guitarist was now a shadow of his former self, wandering away from everyone and everything. In his worst moment, it wasn't a producer, manager, or doctor who intervened, it was Don Henley. In a 2017 interview with the Washington Post, Walsh stated, his voice shaking with emotion, "Don and Glenn saved me. Without them, I wouldn't be here today." As the Eagles were gearing up for their 1994 Hell Freezes Over reunion, Henley and Frey presented Walsh with a harsh ultimatum: either he sobered up, or there was no room for him in the band. No negotiations. No exceptions, Henley said. But Henley didn't simply give lip service. He personally drove Walsh to an Arizona rehab center, remaining by his side as Walsh fought withdrawal and recovery. Throughout those months, Henley phoned every week, not to baby him, but to remind him that this was his fight to win. That tough love saved him. And when Walsh finally graduated from the program, he discovered a present waiting for him, a brand new Fender Telecaster and a note, handwritten by Henley, saying, "Welcome back, Joe. Now go play like yourself." Walsh got teary-eyed years later when reminiscing about the moment. "I cried when I read that." Don doesn't say much, but his actions speak volumes. Henley's kindness at that point was a side of him most people had not seen. Strut and pose on the stage, yes, but also a ferociously protective friend who would not allow Walsh to destroy himself. Glenn Frey remarked, "Don's tough because he cares. He wasn't going to let Joe go." Henley's part in his recovery remains for Walsh a debt of gratitude that he will always carry with him. That loyalty was again tested in 2016, when Glenn Frey died. It was a tragedy. Frey wasn't only Henley's songwriting collaborator, he was his brother, the man who had built the Eagles with him from the ground up. Henley was destroyed. Walsh remembered seeing him sitting by himself in the studio, listening to Desperado with red, puffy eyes, as if bidding farewell to Frey through music. Henley said he didn't believe the Eagles would be able to go on without Glenn. But Walsh and Timothy B. Schmidt softly encouraged him to reconsider, proposing that Glenn's son, Deacon Frey, would be the torchbearer. Henley initially resisted. Finally, he nodded softly, saying it was the proper way to pay tribute to Glenn. Before their first show with Deacon in 2017, Henley pulled Walsh aside backstage and said, "Joe, we have to do this for Glenn. We can't mess up." It was both a burden and a vow, and Henley worked tirelessly to ensure every performance was a worthy tribute. His pain was woven into every song, and audiences could feel it. But Henley and Walsh's tale isn't all about devotion, it's also one of conflict. In 1980, during the fateful Long Night in Wrong Beach concert, things came to a head. Henley and Frey almost fought on stage, while Walsh, inebriated and attempting to ease the tension, made jokes that only served to worsen the situation. Henley scowled at him, enraged. Then he blamed Walsh for being a saboteur, charging his reckless statements to the press with widening the band's fissures. Walsh confessed years later, "I was drunk a lot, speaking out things to reporters. Don bore the biggest burden, writing, singing, attempting to keep us together." I know why he was angry. Even years later, after the Eagles had broken up, Henley would still call Walsh, not mentioning the band, but calling just to see how he was doing. Their respect never changed, even when they appeared to have insurmountable differences. Timothy B. Schmidt once summed it up best, "Don was hard on Joe because he cared about the band. They fought, but in the end, they liked each other. Their personal lives fueled more gossip. Both were romantically involved with Stevie Nicks, much as people assumed this created tension." Walsh, with his blunt wit, cleared the air in a 2019 interview, "I began dating Stevie in 1983, much later than she and Don had split. I didn't poach Stevie from Don. People just like to dramatize." Walsh made it clear, there was never any competition for Nicks. Henley never mentioned her much, nursing his heartbreak in secret, and Walsh respected that privacy. Nevertheless, Henley's intensity frequently collided with Walsh's party-happy nature. Walsh was up for a party, Henley needed to control. Glenn Frey has said, "Don doesn't like personal drama getting in the way of business. Joe's the opposite, he lives like it's a party." This dichotomy, frustrating as it was, provided the Eagles with their equilibrium, responsibility from Henley, vitality from Walsh. Henley was not only a singer. He was the Eagles' visionary, the tactician who would not allow their music to settle for ordinary. Walsh would frequently joke about Henley's perfectionism, how he would take hours over one word in a chorus. But he confessed that without Henley, such songs as Heartache Tonight would not have been masterworks. Henley's leadership also kept the band's integrity intact. When profitable reunion offers rolled in during the 1980s for Venal, Money for Old Clams reunion tours, Henley turned them down, demanding the Eagles maintain an artistic, not commercial, focus. That unpopular choice laid the groundwork for their triumphal comeback in 1994. Walsh frequently diffused the tension when Henley grew too intense. When, in 2001, Henley fretted over a sound malfunction during a strained rehearsal, Walsh launched into Sweet Home Alabama. Everyone cracked up, except Henley, who scowled. But Walsh attested he caught a glimpse of his mouth twitching at the corner. That was his win. Now, their lives mirror their journeys. Walsh, now sober for over 3 decades, resides contentedly in Los Angeles with his wife, Marjorie Bach, and remains devoted to music and philanthropy through Vets Aid, tending to homeless veterans. Henley resides in Dallas with his wife, Sharon, and their 3 kids, having a less public life. He still directs each aspect of the Eagles' performances, still crusades on